Greetings, welcome. Hi, it's Christine, and welcome to our workshop on the squash family. So, one of my favorite squashes is, of course, pumpkins. And you may have grown up with the Charlie Brown. It's a great pumpkin Charlie Brown special that I actually just watched last weekend. And so that's my favorite member, of course. Now, every year you might know about the pumpkin growing contest. And this year in 2023, the giant pumpkin that won was 2,749 pounds. Can you believe that? So, there are a lot of edible members of this family, of course, and that's why I'm talking about it during the holiday season, from Halloween to New Year's. So lots of edible members, including my favorite pumpkin pie and pumpkin soup, even pumpkin ice cream, and baked pumpkins and squashes, and roasted pumpkin seeds, which are very healthy for you. All cultures, not just North America, enjoys members of this family. This is a picture of Thai pumpkin curry. And the Italians also love to deep fry the squash blossoms. And that's one of my favorite recipes to try as well. So tell me, if you're watching live in the chat box, what your favorite meals are that are made with members of this family. Okay, so what are the characteristics of this family? Let's talk about it. This family is named the cucumber or squash family, and it's kind of a tongue twister, but the name is Cucurbitaceae. And all family names in plants end in ACEAE. And so this is the unique part, the cucurbits. And often botanists will just call something that instead of adding the whole ACA part. So you might say, today we're studying the cucurbits. And that family is really broad, okay? So it not only includes the ones we just mentioned that are edible, but it includes almost 1,000 species, depending on how you lump or split the taxonomy. So it includes New World squashes that we're going to be focusing on today. Also bitter melon, cucumber, where that name comes from for the family, cantaloupe, watermelon, calabashes, bottle gourds, and loofah sponges. And here's an example of that right here. So I know it kind of looks like one of those sponges you get from marine invertebrates, but this is actually grown from a plant, the loofah sponge plant. And the cucurbita, that word is Latin for gourd. And it's Latin for gourd. Now, so let's kind of talk about the growth forms. So these are annual plants in this family. They're generally herbaceous, and they're vines. They're generally crawling along the ground. And they really have big leaves, and the leaves and the stems are often quite spiny. They generally have really big flowers. They're generally yellow or white. And here's a mature flower, and here's the flowers that are beginning to wilt, and they're going to be baking the fruit next. And then you see they climb with tendrils. So some of them do climb up into other shrubs or trees. And they have inferior ovary here. So here is the fruit that is being created below or inferior to the flower. And the fruit is known botanically as a berry or a pepo. And here's the fruit. And again, climbing or trailing growth form on the ground with these big lobed leaves. And in this picture, you could also see the stems are kind of spiny. And there's that fruit. And again, here is the flower that is wilted. So again, the fruit is below where the flower was. So that means it's called an inferior fruit, and specifically a berry type or peepo type. And so the species in this family are kind of one of two types sexually. They're either monoecious or dioecious. So here's just a few botanical terms. As you know, I love to teach people about the anatomy and taxonomy and biology of plants, because that will really help you draw it more accurately. And so some species in this family are monoecious, others are dioecious. Mono means one and di means two, and ecious is talking about a house. So monoecious are that has male and female flowers on the same plant. So that's similar to corn and oak and pines. Like if you think about pine trees, you either have the flower that becomes the pine cone, or you have the flowers that are the pollen bearing ones that if you touch them in the spring, all the yellow pollen falls out and you might be allergic to it. The other kind of sexuality in this family are dioecious. That means where there's separate male and female flowers, and those are on different plants. So that's similar to holly, ginkgos, date palms. And then, of course, most animals like us have separate male and female individuals. But always, no matter which, if the flowers are on the same plant or different plants, they're always just unisexual flowers, also known as imperfect or incomplete flowers. So they'll have the male flower. Here's an example. And the male flower is just producing pollen. And you see that there's a little honeybee in there. So the honeybee, of course, is collecting pollen to bring back to its hive and create honey and eat it as well. And then here's a female flower. And so that looks a little different. You see there's only one pistil, and that's going to lead to the usually three different like ovaries. And then the male, there's generally 5 of these male parts and 5 petals in this family. Finishing with the anatomy, now to the distribution and history of cultivation. So again, we're talking about this whole family, the cucurbits or Cucurbitaceae. And this family grows around the world, but we're specifically more talking about the North American ones today, because that's where I live and where most of my viewers live. And they've been cultivated for over 10,000 years in North, Central, and South America. And the North American Native Americans, that is, called squash and the 2 other crops, beans and corn, the 3 sisters, which is kind of funny because I live in Oregon, where there is a series of mountain ranges just to the west of me called the 3 Sisters. But anyway, the 3 sisters were 3 crops: squash, beans, and corn. And they were generally grown together. And there was a certain reason for that. One, they grew all of these because these were all important crops that gave them all the nutrients they needed, like a complete protein. So if they didn't have any animals, any wildlife to eat, like deer, they had enough of all the amino acids to make a complete protein. And so they would grow these together in the same fields. So they would grow the squash, and the squash grew on the ground, as we talked about its growth form, with really big leaves up to a foot across. And those would help to shade the ground, to keep the water in the plants better, and also to shade it from competing weeds growing up. And then they would grow the beans or legumes to crawl up the corn stalks. Now, beans are also legumes, which are nitrogen fixers. So those would add nitrogen to the soil. And then the corn, of course, was another very important crop to the Native Americans. And that was very tall and three-dimensional and allowed for the beans to trellis up them. Okay, and they've also been depicted in art for over 2,000 years. And when I was visiting Quito, Ecuador, I went to a really famous national museum that had some of these gourd-like musical instruments. But I also wanted to show you this other piece that I got when I was in Central America. This is a decorative gourd you can see with the stem, and it was made into a beautiful little box. And the top comes right on there, and it has been decoratively beaded. Isn't that amazing? So anyway, this family has been depicted for thousands of years. Okay, so again, focusing on the family representatives in the Americas. This whole family goes around the world. There are members in Europe and Africa, but that's over 1,000 species. But here in the Americas, we have about 70 species, and they belong to several genera, which is the plural of genus. And the main one that we eat is the cucurbita. And generally, when a genus is named the same as the family, that generally means it is one of the most diverse and representative members of that family. And so here illustrated is the chayote. I'm not sure if it's called chayote or chayote. I think it's chayote, but this is grown in Central America, native. And again, you can see the white flowers with 5 petals and the tendrils. And these are important in Central American cooking. You may have tried those before. I know they have them in my markets. We have a neighborhood Central American market called Colima Market that has these, and that I visited recently when I was making a very special recipe for the holidays, tacos al pastor, which was wonderful. Marie, yes, you've had chayote. Wonderful. And Rochelle, you like the pumpkin onion ravioli you get at Trader Joe's. Oh, yes, I love those too. Another one, a native to North America, lives in the eastern United States. It's called star cucumber. And again, you can see those long tendrils that help it to crawl up into other shrubs and trees. And those leaves that are lobed, kind of like oak leaves. And then there are, of course, many, many varieties of decorative gourds and edible members as well. And those that, like I said, are in the cucurbita genus. And so in that genus, there are many species and many what we call cultivars. So you might like to decorate your house as I do during the holidays with these. And that's one reason I'm doing this program, and one reason I did the step-by-step watercolor demonstration of these guys. So tell me in the chat box if you guys can get these in your local stores, and if you decorate with these. And if you're over in Europe or Africa, like several of my friends here today, like Helen from England and Carly from South Africa, tell me if you have something like this that's in your local stores, and if that's part of your decoration for the fall season. Even though you might not celebrate Halloween or Thanksgiving, maybe you just decorate with these because they are harvested in the fall. Most members of this family do ripen during the summer and they're harvested in the fall. And Sylvia, you said you get them in Germany too. Wonderful. So even though they're native here to Central America, they've probably been growing around the world nowadays. And so they have lots of different names depending on their cultivated variety. Daisy gourds that kind of look like a flower. The spectacled swan, which looks like a swan head maybe. Turk's turban. And so, of course, once the Columbus and other folks came over from the old world to the new world, there were a lot of exchanges of plants and animals. And so, of course, things like potatoes, which became very important to the Irish, and tomatoes, which became important to the Italians, and squashes, all were brought over after Christopher Columbus and folks that followed came to the New World, as they called it. And so here's a beautiful illustration from an illuminated manuscript. And I just love illuminated manuscript history. You may have taken one of my workshops on creating illuminated bookmarks. But here is a page. This is from 1502. So it didn't take very long for these New World members to go back to the Old World and be cultivated and appreciated. And you see in this illustration just how beautifully accurate it is. And these illustrations were created in egg tempera, which I've also taught a workshop on in my watercolor course and my historical pigments course. And look at, you can see there's even a snail there. And look, there's even some sort of a kind of a stag beetle as well. Well, that's it for our quick introduction to this family. I hope you enjoyed learning about pumpkins and squashes and decorative gourds, a little bit about their origin and history and uses in this world. So again, thanks for joining me and take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.